Let's take a look at how easy it is to transform your spreadsheets into beautiful, usable internal tools with Internal. In this example, we're a housing rental business, and we use a Google Sheet called Properties to track and manage information about our properties, including the address, monthly rental costs, status, features, and a link of a photo of the property. Now, let's go into Internal and start with a blank space to create our tool. Now, first thing we want to do is go ahead and add a card list. This is going to display all of the properties that we're managing. We'll choose our Google Sheet data source, which is called Properties. And in this case, we're going to use the List Properties Record function. Let's edit the title to say Rental Properties. And we can also give each card a name at the top. In this case, we can just use the street address. Now let's go ahead and clean up our fields. We can hide most of these fields since we don't necessarily need to see them. Let's keep monthly rent as well as the features. We do want to show an image of our property in our card list, and we can do that by adding an image component. Since the URL for each property is in the image field, we can use insert a variable this card and then select the image field, and this will display the right image in each card. Now let's go back to our card list and add some actions so you can use this tool to manage properties. Let's go and add a Flexbox component. This is going to allow us to add multiple components together. Let's call this Flex1 and label it Actions. Now let's add a pop-up form that is going to allow us to edit each property. For the function, we're also going to choose the Properties Google Sheet. And in this case, the function that we want to use is Update Properties Records. Let's add an icon and label it Edit. Now, if we look at the fields in this form, we're not likely going to want to change the address, type, or features, but we do want to be able to update the rental price, as landlords like to do, as well as the status, so we can determine whether or not it's available or rented. We also have the row number here, which is how Internal knows which row of the sheet to edit. For the row number, what we want to do is pre-fill with the value from the component, bind it to this card, the data within this card, and then the row number. So it's going to select that same card. We can also make this hidden so that the user doesn't accidentally change it. Let's also pre-fill the monthly rent the same way. For status, let's make this a drop-down by choosing User Completes Component field. Let's input our drop-down options. And for the default value, we can insert a variable to tie it back to what's already existing in the card by choosing, once again, this card, the data, and then status. Now, let's go back to our Flexbox and add a button that will allow us to remove a property. Here, we're going to select the same properties Google Sheet. This time, we're going to use the Delete Properties Record function. Let's add an icon and an appropriate label. Since this is a delete function, all we need to do is specify the row number that we want to delete. And we can bind this back to this card and the row number. Let's go to the Design tab and then change the color of our button. If we go back to our Flexbox, we can go into Design and choose the alignment and add some padding. Now let's go back to the card list. Let's adjust the position of our buttons here below the image. Now let's also add some drop-down components that will allow us to filter our properties. Let's call this Type Filter, filter by type, add our options below, and we'll do the same thing for a status filter. To bind these filters to the card list, we'll go to the card list configuration and add a filter. And first, we'll make type is same as a component value, where it's the type filter's value, and then we'll add another filter and do the same thing for status. Now let's add a form to our tool that will allow us to insert new properties. We'll select the Google Sheet data source properties, and this time we're going to use insert properties record as our function. Let's edit the form name, add an icon, and change the label of the button. We can also add form instructions to make things easier for our users. Now let's add the fields that we want in our form. For the street address and other fields like it, we can leave it as text to be completed by the user. For the state, we want this to be a drop-down with the following options. Similarly, we're going to set up status as a drop-down. And for the type field, we can actually use radio buttons. Finally, for our features, we want the ability for a user to select multiple options. So in this case, we're going to select a tag selector and input our tags here. Now, once we hit publish, our tool is ready to use, and you can filter by the type, by statuses, edit the rent or the status of any available property, and use this form to create new properties. That's it. Thanks for watching.